Good morning. Hi, I'm Frank Messina, and this is the July 23rd, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. Before we start, we have a couple of announcements. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Pursuant to Governor Healey's March 29, 2023, signing of acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately address the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945, conference ID 468-813-618, hashtag, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay. The next action we need to do is take a roll call for those here or calling in remotely. Bob Lear.
Here.
Steve Burlingame.
Here.
Stephanie Hamilton. Steph is absent. Sandy Porter.
Here.
Janet Tennyson.
Here.
Robert Stevenson. Robert Stevens. Robert is gone. And Nancy Barr.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Robert is on vacation. I'm not sure where Stephen is. I'm going to just pause a second. Mr. Dre is calling in. Maybe he's not connected. Is Eric Dre connected?
He is not.
Hey, Eric.
I've tried 4 times. It's not letting me go through.
I'll resend it to him right now.
Okay. Christina will send you the link right now. Okay?
Okay, great.
Boy, it's a new world we have, right? Okay. Glad I left my phone on. You couldn't hear that ring, right? Just rings in my head. All right. Okay. Just quickly, we can proceed while Eric is trying to make a connection with the minutes. We have minutes of July 18, 2024.
June 18.
One more time, Annie, you did a good job. Any comments, questions, additions, deletions of the minutes of June 18? We have a motion to adopt the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Okay. Bob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
I wasn't here, but they look good to me.
Oh, you were absent? Okay, abstain. All right, Nancy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. By the way, the chair voted yes for attendance, so I am here, in case there was any doubt. Okay. All right, so we eliminated the minutes. No Eric Dre yet. Okay. Well, we'll do a preamble. A couple of things, just quickly. Technically, once our terms of office are over in the summer, we're supposed to reorganize. Nancy has not yet been official, so she's here ex officio. Her term has expired, but we don't have any hearings, but she's here. So what I wanted to do was wait until to August for our next meeting, when hopefully Nancy will finally have her interview and beyond, and Bob Stevens will hear, and then we'll reorganize at that time.
It's scheduled for
Sorry?
tomorrow. Sorry, Janet was looking at me
I
like,
thought you were, I heard you approved at the meeting.
No.
they need to interview me,
Oh.
and it's been rescheduled 3 times. It's currently tomorrow. Let's finger.
They had to do an in-depth CIA check on it before they. Anyway, in fact, to be quite honestly, I kind of, I won't complain is the wrong word. I just noted to the select board that this process is kind of ridiculous. It takes too long, and if they don't know us by now, they're never going to know us, you know? So they're looking at it, see if they can streamline the current position. What they do is they need 3 select people to be interviewed, and guess what? And it's difficult, especially in the summertime. So we will do that, and there's no major objections. We'll just reorganize in August. Any luck with Eric yet? The reason I asked Eric to join us was that the primary objective of today's meeting is the update of the Form Bs and the reports which Eric has done for us over the years. And I wanted to have a little bit of a preamble. Okay, Eric, while that's working out. Let me jump to the couple of things I was going to talk about afterwards, just quickly. The first thing on old business, we're going to skip new business, all right, guys? The National Register eligibility of the William and Ann Nickerson Homestead Archaeological Site. I've had a couple of conversations with Holly Herbster of PAL, the Archaeological Lab, and she's working diligently, and she's on track, hopefully, to complete that document and the preparation of the report by September, October. So hopefully in September, October, we'll meet, review it, and then formally send the application to Mass Historic. Excuse me. Yes, Eric?
Sorry. Yeah, neither method is working. She's having 2 different ways of getting on.
There's 6 of them
Well,
on the link, so.
we could do this. Can everybody hear Eric?
Yes.
I'm getting a priority interrupt from the control room.
No, sir.
No good?
Call in.
What's the problem he's having?
He can't make a connection.
Can we send him the proper link?
I'm sorry?
I just sent him the link, and I had Sarah Clark upstairs check the link.
Links that she sent.
I don't know,
You could give him a call-in number so he can use his phone into the Teams meeting?
sure.
Well, he's on the phone here. Can we use that?
No, sir, he's gotta call the Teams meeting.
It doesn't come.
All right. Eric,
Yep.
stand by. We're going to give you the number. Okay? If you could call in,
Okay.
okay, 508-945-4410.
Okay.
And that means you will be connected via your phone. Okay? Try that.
Give him that code, that.
Eric?
Yep.
Then you have to put the conference ID in. And the conference ID is 468-813-618 hashtag. It's on the agenda that we sent to you.
Right. Okay. Good.
Sorry about that.
But, okay.
Jeez. I remember when beepers were the latest technology. We're dating ourselves. Okay, so anyway, so in September, October, we should be able to submit that, and that would be great if we could make that happen. Can I interrupt here, Mr. Lear? Do we have any inputs from your foundation relative to this process?
The foundation board met 2 weeks ago, I guess, and agreed to cooperate and collaborate, whatever, with the Historic Commission, and we want to have a look at the memorandum of understanding with the Nickerson Family Association to see if we can massage that a bit to cover that. But we've been busy with some benefits, so
Good.
took some priority over this.
Well, I appreciate that. That was Gary Nickerson, who's a member of the Nickerson Family Association, who's got another lawyer around here who wants it to be formalized. So I think that's good that we do that. All right. Any luck, Eric?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, excellent. All right, now you got to hold on because we jumped ahead. So anyway, that's where we are with the Nickerson Family Association and the National Register eligibility issue. And again, once we get a favorable answer from Mass Historic, then we, as a commission and the town, can proceed with the Neckerson Family Association if we want to make a formal application. That's going to cost a little more money, and we need to work on that. The second item under old business, which we're jumping ahead to, is the U.S. Coast Guard boathouse. As we're all aware, the bond issue failed at town meeting. The boathouse is still sitting up there in Quincy, waiting to come back home to Chatham. There is some discussion to modify the proposal to, I guess, dot the i's and cross the t's on the funding request to try and finish. I think they need a couple of $1 million to finish the effort. There's a significant amount of community preservation funds which were already committed to restoring the boathouse as, repurposing it as an upweller, at 90 Bridge Street. I would mention to the members of the Board of the Commission, the Historical Commission, who are interested and supportive, I think as I personally was the last 25 years, the Select Board, nothing happens right away in this town. The Select Board is meeting, I believe, on August 6th, and I believe it's going to be on the agenda. So if you're interested, and I hopefully you are, and supportive, if you could come or tune into that August 6th Select Board meeting and encourage the selectmen to see if we can do something to bring the boathouse home. We can't bring the boat home, that we gave away to Orleans, but we can bring the boathouse home. All right, that was all the old business. Eric?
Yep.
Good, I'd like to recognize Eric Dre. Eric is our preservation consultant to the Historical Commission. And Eric, over the years, has been involved with the process. Eric, did you work on the original one, the survey?
I did.
That means you're not,
Original survey plan?
yeah, that 2014, that means you're not 39 anymore, right? Okay.
No, I got gray hair to prove it.
Well, again, for new members of the commission, we have one, not that new, Nancy. When you were on the commission, we were still doing them by hand. We were doing them. I know,
We were doing them ourselves.
ourselves, and,
Well, with some help for the architectural part, but we did the other
Right.
parts, yeah.
yes. And then I guess it was after that, around 2010, I believe Don was chairman, when we said, well, you know what, there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more important. And I think, as I like to tell the tale, when Nancy and I were on the commission back then, if we had one application a month, it was a lot. I mean, last year, I think we had, what? 66 applications?
Yeah.
So things are moving too quickly. And it was a need that we need to formalize and professionalize, if that's a word or not, the whole process. So in 2014, we did an extensive survey of the town. Eric, did we do every residence over 50? Was that the criteria at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so we completed that, and we effectively did a survey, what was done, whether it should be done, whether it was not. So Eric made, I would say, a preliminary assessment relative to the historical significance of the property. Is that a good way to put it, Eric?
Yeah, based on sort of windshield sort of observation and looking at assessor property cards. So not a deep dive, but just sort of a cursory looking at each building and determining whether it looks like it's something that's worthy of a Form B.
Okay, so this has really been the diary for Christine and Michelle and Sandy, I guess before them, Patty Buck, I guess, was, the people who were, in fact, the administrative people in the office to make a decision on how to advise us, how do we proceed? Is this something worthwhile? Fortunately or unfortunately, the current bylaw, the way it's written, the determination of historical significance rests with the commission itself. So, we make the decision whether something is historically significant. What we did in interim, we created the so-called administrative review process, which just helps eliminate some of it. But we're still in the situation of needing to know what's going on in the community. Now, Eric did an update in 2023, which you all have. or at least you have seen it. We have a couple of extra copy here if somebody wants to look at every page. But in your packet, you received from Eric an abbreviated, an abbreviation of the survey plan and also his recommendations. When we did this update in 2023, I guess that was in the midst of COVID, the purpose was to take a hard look at Eric's recommendation and say, well, where do we go from here? What do we do, what we don't do? And kind of relied on Eric to give us some recommendations of what we could or could not do to update the Form Bs. Eric, just quickly, if I may, lean upon you, for the 5 members of the public who are watching, or maybe 6, what is a Form B? How did it come about? And, when is Massachusetts alone in this concept of a cultural resource information system, or is it a nationwide process?
No, the Form Bs or building forms fall under the category of documentation. And documentation is the first of 3 steps of preservation planning. And preservation planning starts with documentation, and then it's evaluation, sort of determining how significant, relatively speaking, certain resources are. And then the third step is protection. What kind of preservation measures may you want to take to protect properties that you have evaluated and that have been documented that are highly significant? So every town in Massachusetts, certainly, and other states have other ways of doing this. Their main task number 1, is trying to get to a comprehensive documentation of their historic resources. And Mass Historical Commission has developed forms to be used for buildings and for areas where it's a collection of buildings that have a common either architectural or historical connection. And then there are forms for cemeteries, structures, and objects as well, and archaeology. This work, as you may know, goes back to the 1970s, is when people started doing these Form Bs. But back then they were, not surprisingly, extremely cursory in what they included. And like most products that come out of the state or government, the requirements to get it completed are much more extensive now. The information being requested is more extensive, but also importantly, the ability to access good historical information is much more available now. Back in the day, for example, you would never have done title searches when you were doing, documenting 100 houses, for example. That would just have been way beyond the scope of that kind of consultancy. But now we can do it online. And also, we have access through Ancestry.com to, a whole bevy of vital statistics and records. So you can really piece together the story of the history of properties much, much more than you were able to in the past.
Well, that's great. I just wanted to put it in perspective, and, from my point of view, I agree with everything you said, obviously, but when a decision is being made relative to, is a property historically significant or not, well, what does that mean? What is in fact the architectural significance of a building? And, what's the difference between a Queen Anne and what's, we all come from different backgrounds as a commission, and it's good to have a professional help us, guide us, when we make the decision. Well, is this worthy? Is this something which is worthy to be saved or to be documented in some way? So that's great. I guess I'm kind of making the case for myself and to us and to the public and to the powers to be that, well, as much as we've done, and we've done a lot, okay? I think we're probably pretty much up there in terms of the communities on the Cape, in terms of the number and the quality of our Form Bs. Eric, you agree?
Yeah, I think that, yep.
Yeah, I'm looking for a pat on the back. Okay. So, but now the question from my point of view is, and I think we have initiated the idea, we need to take another look at it, and why? And I think Christina and I both have noticed sometimes when a building or a structure comes before us, and it's in an area, okay? And what they did in the 80s and 90s, they did area forms. Well, guess what? We're not, the area is not coming before us, a specific building is coming for us, and we don't know anything about that building, okay? And that's one of the recommendations, Eric, if I'm correct, on your page 6, that we should take a look at. And
Well, actually, that's not to be. I mean, that's actually not accurate.
Go ahead.
The past phases of survey work have, I think, pretty much covered all of those kinds of 19th century, early 20th century properties have been documented. Where we are now is, well, you want me to sort of summarize what the recommendations are? Frank?
can you give me that again, Eric?
Yeah, do you want me to just summarize what the recommendations are?
Yes, okay, yeah, why don't you do that? Yeah, that would-
Yeah, because it's not that buildings there are in areas and haven't been surveyed. Part of the problem is that, not surprisingly, some of the most significant houses and oldest in Chatham were surveyed first, and but those survey forms are now, frankly, out of date. As they between 1978 and 91, so they're at least 33 years old. And the architectural description is inadequate, and the photo documentation and other elements of it are inadequate as well. And I think the reason why it's particularly important is that a lot of those resources also happen to fall within one of Chatham's National Register districts or in the historic business districts, which means, that they're going to be reviewed potentially at some point. And I think it will benefit the town and show respect to the owners of these properties that they're not pulling out a 33-year-old form to say, here, see, we have documented your house. And, when it's just really not sufficient. And it's certainly not sufficient to do the kind of evaluation that you may be called upon to do if they come before you. So I think it's really important that those get updated. They don't need to be redone. I think it can be cheaper than just doing new Form Bs, because if it were decided that the historical narratives on these were sufficient, it's just sort of bringing the rest of it up to scratch. And the person who did the vast majority of those, Candace Jenkins, she was a very good preservationist, and so I think the historical narratives are good. I also and then there's another wave of surveys that were done in late 90s, 2000, that could be a later phase that also would benefit from being updated. And then we didn't complete all the recommendations in the 2014 survey plan. There's still, by my calculation, about 100 buildings that have yet to be documented and should be, and the priority on those are early to mid 20th century properties that are again, located in the National Register districts or the Chatham Historic Business District. But also, I had identified good examples of colonial revival and post-traditional houses. For example, like the windmill houses that you kind of see in different parts of town that really helped contribute to a moment in Chatham's, development in colonial revival architecture, and a couple of good examples of mid-century modern architecture. So there's a fair amount that I think the town would greatly benefit from doing to bring it up to current standards. And then there are the area forms that I mentioned, which again are forms when it's a collection of resources where individually the properties may not need an individual Form B, but can be described as part of a collection of buildings that have a shared history. I don't know if you've ever seen Mashpatuxet. I know, Frank, I'm sure you've seen it. It's a very charming 15-cottage colony in South Chatham that's very intact and, presumably somewhat fragile to potential development pressures. And then, we have those really wonderful post-World War II subdivisions, the Harding Shores and Harding Beach Hills on the way to Harding Beach and River Bay. all of which sort of really made a major sort of shift and contribution to Chatham's sense of place and build out.
All right, well, thank you. I guess, what we need to do, because it's everything related to cost, and let's have a discussion, if we will. You have, effectively, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 potential areas. But if you were to flip a coin, Eric, I guess the ones in terms of the highest priority, in my view, would be to update some, not necessarily to update, but some of the new Form Bs in the areas where we don't have them versus the update. What's your sense of that?
Yeah, I think maybe sort of being able to have a complete documentation. So yeah, doing the final 100 that would really, finish the job, I think would probably be smart, especially in as much as they fall, that they may be coming before you at some point. So yeah, but then next I would go back to those 1991 Form Bs and update them. Because I also sort of believe strongly that, once they're updated and you send them to the owners, it will imbue in them hopefully more of a sense of pride and a deeper understanding of how the town values these resources, and also will be more useful to you when and if they come before you.
Mm-hmm. So you really feel that the 78, 91, 245 updates is really, when you view in terms of
I
priority?
really do, because those are some of the most historic houses in town.
I got you.
They-
All right, now
which is why
I
they were-
understand where you're coming from. Okay, all right, okay, all right. Well, any thoughts, folks?
I have a question for Eric, if you
Sure.
might. Eric, it's Bob Lear. I am involved with another organization that found that in order to qualify for grants, the town needed a current open space plan. Is there some comparable ability here that if we update our plans and get them up to standard, that we might be eligible for grants from the state or federal government?
Yeah, well, there is a program called Certified Local Government, CLG, where towns that have a comprehensive preservation program in place, and I think you already do, but it's just gotten better and better. And it's a pretty onerous sort of application process through MHC, but if you become a certified local government, a percentage of the money that is sent from the Park Service, from the Department of Interior, to each state preservation office, because Mass Historical Commission is both the state preservation commission, but also the representative of the federal program, that the federal money that comes to Mass Historical Commission, a percentage of that is directly funneled through grants to CLG communities. So it would be worth considering.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Bob, I missed the first part. You were talking about grants for this effort or for another organization?
No, for this organization.
Yeah, right,
The other
yeah, that-
organization can't do it because the town doesn't have a current open space plan.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you should say it. I think I have somewhere, maybe I took it off, items on hold. No, I don't. On issues on hold in the agenda, if you look at the second part of the agenda, development of preservation plan. That, that's there. It's something I'd like to do, but it's not an easy job. It's a big deal.
But it sounded like Eric said that we currently have in place what we would need to qualify. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and you have money. I think you have what you need to qualify to be a certified local government. And I can send information to Frank about that. That wouldn't necessarily fund certain projects that you may be interested in. I don't think it's a large amount of money, and I wouldn't necessarily rely on that to fund major initiatives. But it can be a good thing.
Well, Eric, when I looked into it, you know, development of a preservation plan and at various meetings we attended with the Cape Cod Commission, yes, it does automatically allow you to receive certain amount of funds, but it doesn't preclude you from other mass historic plans. And in fact, if you look at our agenda, under new business, the last little paragraph I said is request funding and possible grant applications. You know, we could, I mean, it's a job. And now that we have a new planner, Christine, if you're listening, who we just met, that's something I would like to pursue, you know, and the town should pursue it, you know, between Christina and Christine, you know, it's a task. So it's something we could look into. And I think the first step, quite honestly, for us, is to kind of give Eric some direction and get some kind of a general guidelines in terms of cost. And with that number, we and community development have some idea how much funding would be, whether or not they want to go out for an RFP, and whether or not we want to prepare a grant. You know, nothing is going to happen right away. It takes time, but we need to start the process. Yes.
Do we have any funding at all, or is this all of this would be new funding?
The duck just came down. Most people don't know what that means, the duck came down, because they're too young. But there is, the Historical Commission per se does not have a line item budget of its own.
Right.
We rely upon the kindness of the Community Development Department, and Katie Donovan, if she's listening in, has been very generous in helping us. But it's like everything else, money is always tight, even though it's a, what was it, $75 million town budget, whatever it is, but it's always tight. So, but that's why we'd like to at least give her notice so they can do some planning.
Right.
You know, we can't ask her in May that we need money, and
Right.
it just needs planning. And that's the whole purpose of this process, to do some planning, advanced planning, put effectively a timeline together of what the tasks are, what's the priority, and what's going to cost, and then we can do some planning. The planning would be both identify funding which exists in current budgets, and secondly, when we got to just, you know, put pen to paper. I think as a commission, in my tenure, we only applied for one grant, and we lost, because I didn't ask for enough money. I asked for 12, and there was a $15,000 limit in the grant, but I didn't read that small print. So it was rejected. Anyway, but that's funny, but it's true. Okay, any other comments or comments? Yes, I'm sorry, go, yes. Sorry, Steve, I'm looked this way.
I have a couple. One, I guess, is more specific to this, and the other one is not. But initially, I've been on the commission for a few years, and I have yet to hear anyone say that the Form B that we may be looking at is in any way inadequate, that it's not appropriate, it's not enough, it's too much, it's incorrect, or whatever, which seems to be some of the reasons that we're even looking at this whole process. I guess if it's not broke, why fix it? It would appear that the Form Bs that I've reviewed have been done by usually a couple of people, and almost always the two people that I have seen on here I recognize as being very very aware of the town's history, very dedicated to the work that they were doing, and I guess that's the reason that I find the current Form Bs to be generally adequate. Somebody, I don't know who, submitted this Form B of the old Atkins house, and apparently they did it because it's got some handwriting on it. That handwriting doesn't bother me at all. That handwriting tells me that somebody reviewed it, added some information. They didn't type it with a new modern typewriter or whatever you use these days to type with. But I don't think that makes it inadequate, inappropriate, or worthy of $30,000 of
Okay,
review.
thank you.
The other,
Oh, sorry.
the other comment I have, and that Eric would be a good reference, a resource for this, is that I reviewed the bylaws that some other towns have regarding what they review as historical buildings. And they frequently are what I would consider real, unassailable historic buildings. It might be like the brick block on Main Street, that it's clearly historical. I think we're getting to the point that we're declaring some things, we're suggesting they're historical only because they're part, I think you used the term, part of Chatham's structure or being or something of that nature. Not necessarily being historical, but only being part of the fabric of what Chatham is. When you talked about things like River Bay. To me, those don't reach anywhere near my definition of historical. I mean, if we have a very, very broad definition of historical, sure they are. Everything is. My breakfast was historical because it happened. Actually, it didn't, but it could have been.
We
And I
have
think
the
that-
agenda, you know, I added an item on the agenda, the next item. I mean, if you're going to pontificate on that issue, with all due respect, sir, it's on the agenda, the next item. Review for thresholds for exceptions.
Well, I think,
But I'd like to stay close to the Form B issue. And so
Okay.
we don't have to delay it, you know, discussion.
very well. Okay, then I'll save whatever I have to say about the definition of historical for later on the agenda.
Yeah. We added that because you had been asking for it, and we have talked about it a lot, but we'll talk about it one more time, hopefully put it away. Okay, so if I could summarize what you're saying, Steve, is you don't feel we need to do anything as far as the Form Bs are concerned?
I'm not yet convinced. I
All
think,
right, fine, I got it. You need more evidence. Have you reviewed the survey and Eric's recommendation?
I have not, I certainly have reviewed his recommendations, but I'm not yet convinced that we need to spend $30,000 on redoing the.
Well, $30,000 is a budgetary to do everything, okay? And we've already spent at least $50,000 or more over time for what we've done so far. So the purpose of today's discussion is to review the results of the surveys that we have completed and to determine how we want to proceed. And this commission has in the past authorized that work, and now it's a form of, you know, all right, now we've got to decide how we want to proceed on it. Okay. So anybody else? Sandy, you got any comments on the whole process or what you would like to prioritize, if anything?
I actually, I do think we need the new Form Bs, approximately the approximate 100 Form Bs, and the redo, because I'm sure Nancy remembers, as I remember and you remember, these were not always, the old ones were good, but they weren't as complete as the new ones that Eric has given us. So I'd say number 1 and number 4 are my priorities.
Okay. Number 1 being the
The 9,
update,
the building forms, the 240 for,
yeah, 245, and the second was what?
new Form Bs, the
New
approximate.
Form Bs, yeah, okay. Janet, if any kind of comments? Or-
No, I think I go along with your recommendation.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right. Bob, anything more?
I guess just a question. I'm reading this as saying that the new Form Bs would be estimated at 30,000, and updating the old ones from 1999 would be another 25,000, which means we're talking more than, I mean,
Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't come up with a price yet for the updates of the 1991 forms, but something around that probably would be about right.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Nancy?
I think I am tending towards both updating the very old forms and sort of what has already been said. I would say that when I was a member of the commission 20-plus years ago, those forms already felt old at that time. Although very valuable information was on there, but the architectural part and certainly the photo documentation part is way behind what would now be there, especially the photo documentation, especially the visual aspect. But I do believe that we need to invest in the ones we don't have, because I do think that there are multiple systems in place to protect our oldest historic buildings. The ones that are in the National Register District are probably some of the oldest forms, and they also have multiple checks and balances in place now for us to be able to do our job with them. So I don't feel like, oh gosh, they're hanging out there without any protections. So if you had to choose, I'd probably go with the new ones that are undocumented, because it is a big chunk for each of those. Because I think those forms are well done. They are out of date. They should probably be updated, but if I had to choose between that or the 100 new forms, I would go for the 100 new forms.
Okay. Well, it's interesting when you started to, I think at least the 50 Form Bs that I did should be thrown out. Because I don't remember anything I did. What am I doing?
That wasn't before 1991.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes, and
Frank, one of the things that I think on page 6, Eric's recommendations, the Mashpatuxet, the 15 cottages, those will change if we don't get some paper on those.
Yeah, I
That's
do, and
really important.
Yeah, I think what we're saying here, if I'm summarized, because I'm going back and forth, you guys, there seems to be somewhat a consensus that the old building forms from 1978 to 1991 is a priority. Did I get that right from people? No.
Well, no, I actually would, if I had to, if we only had money, if we had 25,000 for one or the other, I'd go for the C, Part C.
Part C.
Which one?
C of the recommendation, the new forms and the new areas,
Oh,
and
the
then,
new
and then
forms.
prioritize within that.
Oh,
If
the
we-
new forms.
And the new
for
areas.
Houses within National Register districts.
Well, it says there's 100 properties. I would want us to spend a little more time to prioritize within that and actually look and see what they are, because maybe I would say, let's do the new areas versus some of the new areas. I don't know if I would do River Bay, but some of the new areas before some of the 100 forms, but I would want that process to be prioritized. If we really feel like the 1998 to 2000 forms, looking at, the second part of the B recommendation, the redo, I guess I don't know if 1978 to 1991, they're old, but as Frank's saying, if 1998 to 2000 were done really poorly, then maybe those would be prioritized over the oldest ones. I guess we would have to look, but my feeling is between the two areas, old forms versus undone forms, if we had to choose, I would choose undone forms, and then I would have us do a little bit more reviewing and prioritizing to decide what parts of that we tackled first.
Okay. On Eric's letter, which I just got a copy of because I was using the wrong one, it's item what?
Eric's letter,
No, number 1.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at his plan.
Yeah, I've got too many pieces of paper.
This one? Okay, sorry, okay, on Eric's letter, I'm talking about 3 and 4 being prioritized over 1 and 2.
All right, now I got you. All right.
And us to look at 3 and 4 to decide what within that we'd prioritize. And if 1 and 2 are gonna be done, I'd also look at that and decide what to prioritize, whether the oldest forms are actually a priority or the ones between 98 and 2000 are so bad, we should prioritize those. I don't know.
All right.
So that's my opinion.
Bob, what's your feeling on that strategy?
I agree. I do think, well, Nancy, that the new forms are the ones to capture what we've got and really
Okay.
bring it up to date. And the other question is, the other areas involve, what does bringing it up to date mean? And a deeper look at each one of those to see.
Okay. So item 3 and 4. Sandy,
Oh, absolutely.
say again?
Absolutely. I think I had
Okay, good.
said before, item 4 and item 3.
All right. Janet?
I agree with Bob and Nancy.
Okay, just a prioritization. Steve?
Do I understand, when you talk about, this would be in item 4, say that the deed for Form B would only arise if and when they came before the commission for demo delay. Is that what I understand? We would not be doing it we would do them on an as-needed basis if they came before the commission for demo delay or demo? The application?
Like we do now.
Eric?
No, they would be done to have them ready when and if they're needed. And they would be done to provide the owners of those houses additional information about why they should
Okay,
care
so
about them.
you would do it in advance, you wouldn't just do that yet.
Okay, so
It's the wording, yeah.
So what I'm hearing then is you would do a Form B on, for instance, all the homes in River Bay?
No, that's an area form.
No,
So there's 100 homes that we haven't talked about that have not been done, but have been listed as priority, from my understanding. And
Yes.
that does not include River Bay.
Gotcha.
not in River Bay yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so that's good for what I'm trying to do is sit down with Eric, put a real proposal together, other than these back of the envelope Erics. I don't mean to be derogatory, but, to something more specific, and more delineated, so we could go. And the purpose then is to see if we can apply for grant money, okay? To do some of these things. And I do agree with the comments which have been said here relative to Patuxent Trail in South Chatham and, Harding Shores and all that, especially the cottage communities. And Eric, personally, I would like to prioritize them in some level because, the way the land is being developed in Chatham, I just found out there were 4 acres in South Chatham I didn't know existed, which all of a sudden there's gonna be 3 or 4 houses. And, so there's a lot of pressure to build. And then with all our good officers, the select board are finding ways to put apartments all over the place. So, all that land is gonna be subject. And, I go past the ones on Main Street and, by the White Pond, and I said, my goodness, what's gonna happen with those things? And we need to do something, at least to document it. It doesn't mean we're gonna preserve it, it doesn't mean it's gonna become a National Register area, but at least document what we have, and that's the point. Well, I think this has been extremely helpful, hopefully to you folks and to myself, and we will, stay tuned. There's more work to be done, and Eric, I really appreciate your help, but if you could hang on there, Eric, for a little bit. I'm gonna leave this now, okay, and we'll work on something, and I'll get back to the commission on this. So I've got to go to task.
Yep. And but just one final note on that, just to make sure they all know, part of the survey plan included a street index of all the properties that were looked at and the recommendations, and that was updated in 2023 as well. So there is a spreadsheet that has every address that we're talking about here, so that when we start to look at the next level down to sort of really refine what we want to do, it's all there for you to look at.
No, I mean, we don't have extra copies of this, but they exist in the office.
I think I've seen it digitally. It's available as a
So if
PDF.
you really want to look at what Eric is recommending, what should be redoed, what should be surveyed, which is already done, and don't worry about it. So we do have a rather definitive document with his recommendations, so a little light reading. Thank you. Okay, just quickly now, not quickly, but we'll move on. Sorry. And I can't find it. The next item we wanted to look at and discuss was the issue of the review of the current 158 bylaw relative to the issue of the 75-year threshold for acceptance. Our administrator, what's your proper title? Department coordinator. Our department coordinator, Christina, put together some information for us, which you have, and she looked at the various towns in Massachusetts and, members of the public. Basically, what we found is that the issue of the question is our 75-year threshold correct? Should we be doing less or should we be doing more for the town of Chatham? So what we did, and Christina did mostly, is we looked at the towns in Chatham, in Cape Cod, and as well as in Massachusetts, and to see where they were. As we know, a 50-year threshold is the threshold that Mass Historic Commission uses as a trigger for review of a home of whether or not it's historically significant or it's historic. And this practice is followed, by most of the towns as a minimum. There are towns that have the 75-year threshold, like Chatham and Dennis and Toro, and there are other communities that have even more of that threshold. Okay, but if you look at where we are, 75 years seems to be the threshold that everybody's using, for the review of. I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Eric?
Nope.
Okay, so 75 years seems to be the threshold that the majority of towns, if not all of the towns, are using. Did we find any with 100? No. So we found none with 100, and we really found none with less. So that's where we are. Now, the question is, or the issue that Steve has brought up more than once, is the issue of, well, we really shouldn't be looking at 75. We should look at older. So I don't see that as a case, but Steve, you're really the primo here, so why don't you go ahead and give us your discussion?
I'm swayed by what some other towns are doing. I don't think we ought to be necessarily. We don't have a real issue at this point over the 75 years, and so I would think that at least until we speak to Eric more and get better help from him regarding places like River Bay, which I think really stand out to all of us as being very close to 75 years of age, and is it really something we really want to dig into? But I'm convinced that we should probably wait on that, particularly waiting on Eric to give us some help regarding like Harding's Beach Shores and River Bay. So if it was up to me, I would put this on hold for the time until it became a problem or became closer to being a problem, or until we get some guidance from Eric in terms of, I guess we're getting into a discussion of, or at some point, a definition of historic. The fact that they're part of the fiber of Chatham is one thing, whether they're historic, I think, is something else. I think if we're going to review the every single house in River Bay, I think we're going to get mired down, and we're going to have, instead of focusing on truly historic buildings, I just think we ought to keep that in mind. But in the meantime, I would recommend that we postpone the discussion for the time being.
All right, well, thank you. But, just to put it in a different perspective a little bit, Steve, I don't completely disagree with you, especially as it relates to River Bay. But I have to, in my mind, I have to put River Bay in the same category as the cottages, White Pond and Wacquasit Village. It's an area. It's an area with architectural and historical, significance. Now, yeah, I'm not talking today. I'm talking 75 years from now, okay? And And as Eric said in the beginning with his introduction to Form Bs, you know, the purpose of historic preservation, one of the first steps is identify and document. And that's what we're talking about. So, and I don't disagree with you. We're not gonna do a Form B in every house in River Bay. But you could start by doing a Form A. You could look at it as an area form and say, what's there and what is easy worthwhile, you know.
I would like to see that.
Yeah, I agree. And I just hope he doesn't use the terminology I've heard about River Bay as God's waiting room. But
I know, that is
that was a joke, members of the public. All right. So having said that, I think we're in agreement on how we proceed. But the one thing I would, just a little bit further, in some of the documentation that Christina provided to me, was looking at the town of Salem, Massachusetts, which has an ordinance and their demolition delay bylaw, which is quite interesting. The way we work is an application, it's more than 75 years, they come to Christina, they got an application, it's more than 75 years, you have to come before the Historical Commission. If Christina makes a determination, hey, Frank, this is a minor modification, maintenance related and all that, we have introduced the whole concept of an administrative review. Works very well, and I think Christina agrees. The public is happy, they don't have to come before us, a big hearing, we take care of it. I have been biting at the bit, well, how do we determine something is historically significant? Currently, it's the bylaw that says we have to do it, okay? I don't want to change the bylaw yet, but how do we approach? And I was looking at Salem, and I think you've got copies of it. Within 21 days, receive a request, the commission shall make a determination of the historical or architectural significance of the property. If the structure is deemed significant, the application shall be forwarded to the full commission. So they have a two-step process. And quite honestly, you know, the difference here is the bylaw or ordinance doesn't say who does it, but somebody is doing that to intervene in the process to make a determination. I've had these discussions with other towns and commissions, and Eric, I think, help me here. I believe you do that for some communities where you help make the determination of historical significance before it comes to the full commission?
Not for demo delay, no. I only do that as part of consulting with CPCs about.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to solve this problem now, but it's something, you know, it's on the radar, and we have to think about it. All right, we're not going to break any records here in terms of a short meeting. All right, I think we've done that. Let me get back to my agenda. The last one is amendments to the demolition delay bylaw and review. We all met the new planner, Christine O'Grady is on board, and we hope that we will be able to work with her to pick up with some of the work that was done prior by,
Ryan Christenberry,
say again?
prior to Ryan Christenberry.
Ryan Christenberry. So hopefully we'll go get some action on that, which seems to be one of the priorities that we wanted to do something about. Okay? Last but not least, you have a piece of correspondence on your table here, and it's a piece of correspondence from Carolyn Whittle. I think I'm saying that right. Carolyn asked if she could say a couple of words before the commission, and welcome. Carolyn, why don't you come up to the microphone and formally introduce yourself. How am I involved in this? Well, we are involved in it as the Historical Commission. Carolyn called me a couple of weeks ago about a situation on her property, adjacent to her property, which is contiguous with the Nickerson family cemetery. And so we got into a discussion about some potential development that's occurring on a property adjacent to her. And she did some research, and she asked me to help and provide some limited guidance of who we should talk to. But Carolyn, why don't you just give us a couple of minutes quickly of what it is and what your concerns are and how we could potentially help you.
Yep, so I'm Carolyn Whittle. I own and live at 1013 Orleans Road. My parents bought the property in 1971, so I have lived on and off at 1015 and 1013 Orleans Road for over 50 years. So I'm a direct abutter to the Nickerson family cemetery, and clearly in what I think is already established as a pretty historic part of Chatham-port. It started because I got a letter from Conservation Commission that a .4 approximate acre lot and a .6 that is part of a field also that I abut is up for development. And those properties owned by the same family abut a piece of property that I know is part of an archaeological dig done in the past. So my concerns with the Historical Commission was, how do we save this field? And on a piece of property that is now part of their ownership, my parents owned part of that, and on that is a cement pad from a monument. So I started trying to track the history of this monument and what maybe historical significance that had. And I've come up with a lot of loose ends, a lot of interesting information, but nothing about what that monument was. I do believe that it is part of the original cemetery. And there are old tracks that go up the hill that we used to use as part of our driveway. And so I'm concerned that we're putting houses on what might be some Native American burial sites or part of the Nickerson family burial sites there. So that's how I got involved in that. And so it's really interesting to hear your conversations about what do we call historical, and the update of the Form Es for the cemeteries was very informative to me. So that's why I'm here. I'm just wondering what we can do to focus not just on houses, but on areas that we could better exhibit how important Chatham is. And I believe that that field is part of that. So that's why I'm here. I don't know if I have a suggestion or a direct request.
Well, let me kind of, when you called me, I said to myself, wow, we just invested about $40,000 of town money over the last few years, updating our archaeological survey of the town, and then secondly, hiring Holly Herbster, PAL, archaeologist, and also Dan Zotto, an archaeologist, to update the Form Es on the cemeteries. And when she called me, I said, son of a gun, I guess it was good that we did that. In the sense that, I was able to provide her information about what we've done. We're not making any judgment. We're just providing information. But there was professional archaeological research done of the whole town, including the cemeteries. And what authority do we have? This is private property, okay? We don't have any authority on it, but the purpose of this, and again, the archaeological surveys we did do, is to provide information and notice to the public, and specifically the owner. And let me say it this way, going to the end, it's going before the Conservation Commission, planning, they're the ones with authority. We don't have authority. What we can do is provide information to say, hey, guess what? There was an archaeological dig in 1980-something by Fred Dunford on that property. So there has been actually physical, not just people walking around finding Indian heads, but somebody actually digging on the property. So it's just information. And that information is available to the owners, to the abutters, and more importantly, to the owner, in the sense that they can ignore all of this, The owner has property rights. But once they start digging, okay, and if they find something, they could be in a very difficult situation, especially if they find a gravesite where somebody can say, you have to stop. And the worst thing contractors want to do is stop, okay? But if you do a little due diligence ahead of time, and if we have some firm information of what could be there, that's a lot easier. And that's what the Historical Commission can do. So I think what we have done through me, myself, and I, so to speak, is we have provided you, links to the archaeological survey, contacts to the archaeologists who did the work, and then help you as best we can to provide that information. And that's what we're about. We have a limited authority relative to demolition delay, but we also have an obligation, in my mind, to provide information to the public and to the town bodies, to say, hey, guys, there could be Indian graves there. Let's take a look. Let's not just do it willy-nilly. So anyway, that was an inarticulate expression. Go.
Frank, I have a question. I can't remember who it was, but somebody came from the state to describe the situation as to that archaeological survey and the results, and only the redacted portion had been published, which was frankly useless to determine where anything was.
That's correct.
And then at least I have, and you have, I believe, had access to the unredacted version, but was pretty close to useless to find whatever it was. And when the person came in here, they said, well, if you ask specifically at the state level, we'll tell you what area we're talking about.
That's right, exactly.
So that's the next
Yeah, that's-
step, and whether a butter can do that, or whether we have to do it as in an official capacity, I don't know.
In my mind, and if Eric's still here, he could probably help us. In my mind, a professional archaeologist can do it, okay? We as a commission probably could also, ask that question if somebody asked specifically about a location. Yes, I'm sorry, Nancy.
No, I was just going to say, it seems like as an official board that does have, as part of its remit, to advocate for historical preservation and archaeology being part of the historical resources of the town, that it's probably a little bit more onus on us not to just give somebody inquiring, links to information, but if we have some indication that there's an area that may be sensitive, that is about to be developed, that I think maybe we should be more proactive about providing the town boards that do have discretion or, regulatory authority over it with the information, which is what you're saying. Like, our job is to document at this point, and that we provide the documentation so that maybe for us to then say that, yes, this information is not available, there's a good reason for that, but we are, maybe we're going to provide a letter, we're going to do an assessment or a
Yes.
documentation and provide that more formally than, I was just going to say, I think
No, I agree.
my inclination is that we do something a little bit more organized.
Well, as Christina's kind of shaking her head.
Yeah.
What happens is when there is a formal application rezoning, they'll ask for comments,
Yes.
okay? And it's at that time that I, as the commission, will say, well, this is what we know.
Right.
Okay? And for instance, we got a copy of the Mass Historic done for dig, so there is formal documentation and
Yeah.
stuff. But again, it's up to the other boards and commissions to make a determination on how they want to, how to affect their decision.
Yeah.
That's
Is that
all.
something we do together, or that's more of an
Absolutely, yeah.
inform, okay. Okay.
Okay. Any
Right, because I suspect my property is one of those redacted areas, paragraphs.
Say that again, Mayor?
I believe that even my property is part of that redacted area.
Yes,
That's in
exactly.
that. So I agree. I'd like to see maybe some formal vehicle that notifies property owners and other, my situation is definitely zoning and conservation layered on top of the historical piece of it. So it would be nice if that communication was shared, so that people are on alert that.
What we'll do, just as I was, when Christina gets, I'll ask Christina to notify the other boards, and her office is, kind of the nucleus or the apex of where it comes through, that we do have some issues and concerns, and when it is the appropriate time, the Historical Commission would like to provide that information formally. We have to be careful here. Every now and then I've been come to some of these boards and told, we didn't ask you to come here. So it's a process, trust me, it's a process. Yes, ma'am.
Do we depend on the people, say this one forward, when they're digging, do we depend on them to be honest about this and let us know they've, you know what I'm saying?
We did, If you look at the archaeological survey that we completed, the redacted and the unredacted, there were a list of recommendations. And one of the recommendations is that we should generate a bylaw which mandates it.
Yes.
I don't see any hands being raised who want to take that task on, you know. Yeah, I agree.
But we could do something maybe shy of a bylaw, whether it was adding whatever. There could be some process that we recommended happen, even if it wasn't a mandated process.
Well, okay, we'll put it on the agenda or something we should think about. The process for notifying okay, I'm happy you guys are looking for things to do. Okay.
Well, everyone here has great respect for the past, but I don't think that every visitor and resident of Chatham knows or understands the wealth of information and history that's in Chatham, and that they may indeed be living on historical information or stories that we should share. Like, they just don't know.
Well, you know, when we did the surveys, we had, it was in the public, it was advertised, we had meetings, you know, they made presentations, and, you know, we got probably 1/2 of 1/4 of 1% of the people showed up, and it's there, but, you know, it's not necessarily people's priority, especially when it's 75 degrees on a sunny day in July, you know, so it's a problem.
Well, in my case, I can say that we were always under the impression that that family was going to donate that
Yeah.
property to conservation, so we didn't think, I never thought I had to worry about the disruption or disturbance of Indian burial ground or artifacts or any damage done to anything there either.
Well, I appreciate you coming forward. I appreciate you contacting me. Anything we can, we will do. And I think what I'm hearing from the board is formalize that process a little bit more. And I guarantee you, and I've been, you know, I have been in contact with Carolyn, you know, and you got to let me know when it is, you know, when it's happening. But it shouldn't fall all on me, you know, the commission chair.
I'd be happy
And it
to.
should fall more on the process of review, of land use review. Well, that's a tough one. I mean, right now, the select board has got their stuff, they're so busy with other things, but.
The other
we'll
thing
do
just to
something.
keep in mind for this particular one is going forward with, you know, the National Register with the Nickerson family, and because that's an archaeological thing, this is very connected to that, so.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's sort of in the purview of what we're talking about, and I'd be very happy to help, Frank.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Do you have any archaeologists in the family? A brother, you know, anyway.
Well, and if I can help in any way, if you want me to sit in on another meeting, if you want to ask questions from my
Well, we'll
point of view, I'm glad to help because I think it's the right thing to do. And I want to thank all of you because without your thoughtful decision-making, you know, Chatham's beauty and the preservation of the history would start to be eroded. So I really appreciate that. Everyone enjoys those benefits.
Well, thank you very much, Carol. I have one last comment or question. You're a resident of Chatham?
Yes, I live here year-round.
We have.
I graduated from Chatham High School when there was a Chatham High School.
Okay, well, good, because there's one position open for an alternate.
I'll let you twist my arm in private, Frank.
Okay, well, you know.
Think about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we killed it.
I have
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go
one
ahead.
question. You know, the redaction, the unredaction, Bob commented that the redacted copy is worthless, which it really is. Why even bother to read it? Who makes the determination as to who can see the unredacted copy?
The unredacted, I always get redacted, unredacted. The unredacted report is on file with the town, okay? And it can be accessed by professional archaeologists.
Only?
Well, I don't say only. It has to be, it can't be, you know, Charlie looking for arrowheads, you know, it has to be a legitimate concern. And that concern, it actually, Mass Historic Commission, I can't think of the name of the office, it's the Office of Massachusetts Archaeological Society. In other words, it's an actual part of Mass Historic commission who makes that determination. So effectively, what would happen is probably the administrative office would contact Mass Historic, and there would be, what is this person doing? Why are they doing? You have to make a case on why you need it,
Holly Herbst
not
made
because
that.
you're interested.
Yeah.
So it's not available to members of the commission
No,
or any member of the commission? You have not seen the under?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
Well, let me
I've seen it generalized, what?
clarify. I asked to see it, and as the vice chair of the commission, and
Yeah.
Ms. Donovan had to do a lot of checking, but I was allowed to see it.
Yeah.
Along with one of our interns from the foundation who was specializing in Native American affairs. So you need to come up, as Frank said, you need to have a good reason for it.
So they made a case.
And you're sworn to secrecy.
I understand that, as would the members of the commission be sworn to secrecy, but I think that having more people in authority or appropriate people have some awareness of it. I mean, I understand, we don't want to tell
No, excuse
Harry
The only thing.
Arrowhead Digger.
The only thing you don't want to, the difference between the redacted and the unredacted and the information which is Mass Historic, which is even more specific, okay, is the actual location. Everybody knows Chatham was settled 15,000 years ago. Everybody knows that there are Indian burial grounds all over this town, and they lived here for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's here.
Yes.
Now, how do you respect that? And the issue, I guess, that Nancy's brought up is maybe we need to formalize it when people start digging. And let me give you, for instance, when there's state or federal money involved, because we've done this archaeological survey, every time the town of Chatham wants to put a shovel to the ground and there's state or federal money, guess what? They have to use the report, they have to hire an archaeologist to validate, yes, from what we know, that could be a sensitive area. So in other words, there are areas which are considered sensitive, extremely sensitive or less sensitive, and they're notified. So for instance, when all of the efforts are being done to dig the streets up for the sewer, I get notified that they're gonna dig on that street. And I get a report from the archaeologist that said, it's okay, they can dig there. But if they are in an area where they're going to dig where it's extremely sensitive, the archaeologist has to be, not me, the archaeologist has to come down and make sure they're digging in the proper place. And the issue is, you can dig. They can't say you can't dig, but if you find something, then the process you have to maintain it. If it's a grave, an Indian gravesite, the Wampanoag tribe is called in, there's a big ceremony. Their position is, put it back in the ground and, put the
Right.
highway right over it.
Frank, can I ask?
So anyway, that's a process.
Can I just ask, I think my question is when somebody brings something to our attention, like I think this is a sensitive area, who do we contact to find out, like can somebody tell us from this hidden information, is this an area that is sensitive?
Well,
Do you know what I
that's
mean?
what-
How do
that's what I
how do we access that?
Well, in what I did, okay, when I found out about it, I called our archaeologist. And I
Okay.
said, hey, can you take a look at that? Now, she's not on paying.
No, I know, so there's no formal mechanism for, it's just, you have a
It's private.
But I would imagine you probably can call Mass Historic and say, we're the Historical Commission, somebody's brought this up, we have a,
Yeah.
okay.
Which
So,
is-
so there is a way, there is some way for us to access,
That's
or
correct.
at least for someone to say yes or no, this is an area that you should be concerned about. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to figure out.
We don't do that. We encourage the owner to do that. Yes, I'm sorry, Carolyn.
No, so your question.
Yeah, Carolyn, I'm sorry. You have to go to the microphone. We're on TV, kids. I thought this was going to be a short
To
meeting.
your question, so a lot of my research just says acres. I don't know where the acre begins and ends. So Sarah Nickerson Covell gave 2 acres to the town for a cemetery. It's down to 40 by 50 feet, but where were those 2 acres? Were they down the hill where they're gonna build? And then reading up on the archaeological dig that was done next to these 2 small lots, it refers to acres.
Right.
So I don't know where the acres begin and end, and the likelihood of hitting something is
Right.
pretty strong based on what I'm reading.
Okay. So somebody may know, but we.
But so someone may know, but because a lot of it's
Yes.
redacted and I'm not a professional, I
Right.
don't even want to take a stab at assessing that.
Okay.
And the Nickersons?
Yeah, you know, you would,
The Nickersons?
sorry.
Wouldn't, oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Would the Nickersons have,
Pardon?
wouldn't they, the Nickersons have a survey of that?
Well, she's in contact with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, we are at a standstill at trying to figure out where those original 2
Yeah.
acres of burial ground, because there's, rumors and folklore that William and Ann are there and some friends and relatives, but where?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it, as Nancy indicated, that it really opens up I think, a really worthwhile area of discussion. If we currently, if a house is 75 years and 1 day old, we're all over it. The fact that it may be sitting on a very sensitive area, we don't discuss it at all.
That's correct.
We don't,
It's a,
it just begs the question of what is our role? What are we protecting? What are we not protecting?
can I ask you to do me a favor? Can you get a copy of the archaeological survey and the update and read the conclusion and recommendations? Because there are specific recommendations in that report of what some towns do. They have an archaeological commission, have an historical commission and an archaeological commission. And I think, now watch this now, with your education and your interest, I think, if the town of Chatham feels strongly that we would like to have it more formalized, I got a feeling you'd get a couple people who could be right behind you. And when I read those recommendations in the survey, I said, okay, I brought it to the town and they said, okay, it's just a matter of starting the ball rolling to generate, hey, we need to formalize this process. Right now, it is not formalized. It's very informal, relies upon the homeowner, or the owner of the property, not just the homeowner, to be interested. For instance, this study, which I don't know if we gave a copy to everybody of this report, which was done in the 80s by Fred Dunford, where they did an archaeological dig. It was the owner of the property who requested it. He went to Mass Historic and said, I think my property is sensitive. I'd like to know what's here. And then, whoops, volunteers came, an archaeologist was hired, and they did a dig. But again, that's the process. Unfortunately, that's what it is.
Well, I think we're beginning to get into it a little bit. I think
Could we add it to an agenda as like things,
Again?
like we've got kind of these things that we put on about, potential issues on hold or new
Yes.
business. And I haven't brought it up because I didn't know what you had discussed when the actual report was done, because I started just at the time that the public was kind of given the update. So is that something where we could say, like, we'd like at a future meeting to discuss
let's-
those recommendations
will
and
add-
see if we want to do anything with them?
I will add it to the agenda, and we have issues on hold.
Absolutely, yeah.
That kind of thing. And
Yeah.
hey, that's how we got into this thing. We've been
Yeah.
thinking about this for 3 years, and then finally, I said, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
it's like we're talking about River Bay.
Say again?
We're talking about River Bay, and if I were a Native American looking for a place to hang out or develop or live or hunt or fish, I think I might look at that. And
Oh, yeah.
I would think that maybe they in fact did and
They did.
acted on the thoughts, and that may be a very sensitive area. And here we are saying, let's spend a bunch of money on assessing these houses in River Bay. I think it's just as important that we assess, was that a substantial Native American village? Which I think is even more important than whether this house is a Royal Barry Wills or whether it's something from the Sears Roebuck catalog.
It also is very quiet. I think it was the last time an Indian grave was about a year and a half ago. but it's very quiet. You don't hear about it. You know, somebody was digging a foundation, the contractor found something, he stopped, he called the police came in, Mass Historic came in, they determined it was an Indian ground, the Wampanoag was here, they put it back in the ground, and they moved on.
Because I think it's important to know if, you know, if happens to be that some individual Native American died somewhere, and that's where he died, and they've
Yeah.
covered him up, or whether it's a part of an actual cemetery or a burying ground of Native Americans, which I think is a different kettle of fish. But I think knowing some of that is something that because we don't have a historical commission, I think it kind of falls on us, and I think we ought to pick up that ball and carry it where we can carry it.
Frank?
I hope the new chairman really would like to dig into this. Yes, I'm sorry.
Better be the new chairman. Frank, so you remember when you had the cemetery person come and talk to us?
Yes.
Would it be helpful to have, remember the lecture that Holly Herbst gave at the library a little while ago?
Dan did
Would-
one too.
Yeah, but remember Holly's was on the archaeological?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would it be
that one.
helpful for us to have that lecture here or not? Maybe
We could
not.
do that. We could do that.
I don't know,
Holly-
I was at the library one, but didn't she, I was under the impression that she had delivered something to you as a board
Yes, there's a-
beforehand, so
there's a re-
yeah, so I think it was similar, maybe.
You know, this meeting is killing me here.
And I was at the library, so
I think that
There is a report that's being generated and it's being printed. We have a copy. We don't have it yet.
so maybe when that comes out, that's a little peg for us
Oh,
to
yeah,
do it
we-
on our agenda.
Definitely.
That'd be great.
And Holly is very good. I'm sure if I call her, she'll either come down or she'll do it again one more time. Yeah, no, it would be fun.
well, it's probably taped, and we could probably just get a copy of the tape.
Well, no, what I'm saying, what I think I'm hearing here, we did an update of the survey, and there was new information that Holly had with it. And I started this whole meeting telling you about she's updating the information for the Nickerson dig. That's an integral part of this update, and she's doing that. So when she's finished in September, October, she's going to give us that report. I'll ask her to come, and I'm sure she'll be happy to do it. And then at that time, we can grill her about, about what other towns are doing. No, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kidding
fair.
around,
No,
guys.
that's-
But it's a big deal. You know, it's a lot of work, and, yeah, great. I'm glad we got interested in it. But remember, there still is an open seat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I told the staff we would be quick, but it turned out not. All right, I'm going to ask for a motion possibly to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
All right, roll call. Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, those of you who are listening in.